Today we're going to be working on this 1985 Mercury 200 horsepower V6 motor. The first thing we're going to do is an oil injection delete. The main reason we're doing it on this motor is because, well, I've already done quite a bit of work. I had to rebuild the fuel pump and go through the carburetors and a bunch of other stuff. Now, this motor's had a lot of tinkering with over the years, and there's an adjuster in here that moves with your throttle linkage to open up the amount of oil that goes in. And well, that adjuster has been grabbed onto with vice grips and stripped, and it can't be in the right position. So when I test ran this motor, I ran it with 50 to 1, and I'm just going to eliminate this. It's safer to run it on 50 to 1 anyway. This is everything you really need to accomplish this. You need a side cutters to get rid of some pesky zip ties, move some wires, a Phillips screwdriver that you don't necessarily need to use even, but if you pull the oil alarm off of the pump, that electrical piece, it makes life easier. You need an 8mm socket with an extension, a ratchet. You need some vacuum caps. I just went to the parts store and picked up a few various sizes because I wasn't exactly sure what I needed. But you do need at least 2 vacuum caps. You need a Mercury oil block kit. This is an oil block off kit with screws from ProMarine. Now you can actually call these people. They gave you a nice phone number, and the part number is 43453, I believe is the part number for this. So this is for a 2.5 liter. 2.4 liter will be a little bit different, same process. Just make sure that you get the correct oil block off kit. This is important because this piece needs to go in where the oil pump used to be on the crank so that the bushing that's in there doesn't come free and destroy your engine. If you just pull the pump out and run it, there's a chance that you lose that bushing. And you want to make sure that you get not just this piece, but the whole kit with the O-rings and screws. The first part of this is to get rid of the oil tanks. There's a little one in the motor and a big one in the boat. We're going to start with this one, and it has an oil level check in the cap and a little alarmy guy on the top of the pump. I believe that's the alarm. So we're going to disconnect all of that first. Make sure your battery is disconnected. We can follow this set of wires, and we know that it comes over here and it's going to go into this box and tie into a ground, and it looks like everything's grounded right back here. Yeah, everything is grounded right up under there on a screw. So we're going to cut some pesky zip ties out of our way, and we will remember to replace them, of course. Try not to cut our wires if we can help it. And we can help it, so don't cut your wires. Now this one is going to be blue and a ground. Make sure we got the blue that's coming out of our oil tank. That's him right there. And then we have a white and a blue coming out of this guy. It's actually blue with a white stripe, or green with a white stripe, I suppose. And a ground. So these two. Now we can see where everything is grounded, and we can remove these two from that. There it is, right under my socket. And we're just going to remove the two blacks that are grounding out. These two things we're removing, and then put the rest right back on there. So this guy goes away, and this guy goes away. And then it would appear there's only the one left coming off the block here. And no other grounds need to go back. Let's put him back straight away though, huh? Don't over tighten that. So our ground's put back, our wires are disconnected. Now we can slide them all out of here and pull the top tank off. Lost a washer. We need our side cutters again to get this zip tie cut and pull this oil line out. This comes from the primary tank, which is down below, that we'll remove next. On this side of the tank in the motor, I've cut the zip tie for the tube that feeds straight into the oil pump. So this is easy for me to just pop off. As soon as I'm ready, I can simply kind of twist and pull this tube off and this whole thing can come out. But first I've got to pull the other side and try to do this without making a huge mess. Now there's not quite enough room to get the oil tank out with the air box in the way. I don't know if we have to fully remove the air box or not, but we at least have to loosen up all of the bolts that hold it onto the carburetors and let it come forward a bit so we can get that tank out of there. This is an 11mm socket, so maybe one more tool. It's all pretty simple though. Not quite. And there it is. Holding this tube I took off of the oil pump up so I don't spill oil everywhere. Now I've got to go set this somewhere and drain it. And what I think I'll actually do is put it right in the big tank, which is laying down here in the boat. This will be the next piece we remove. It has a pulse line running to the crank and a fill line that ran to this that we disconnected. Okay, now let that set there and drain into that for a minute. Now if we follow these lines that come from the oil tank in the boat into the motor, we can see this one right here is the pulse line. It goes to the crank up on a nice little brass fitting in there. Now you could use pipe plugs, or you can just put a vacuum cap right on that nipple after you pull this hose off. The other one just went to the fill, up to the little tank. He's right there. They both come through here. We're just going to pull them out this way. And kablamo! All of our oil tanks are removed. It's very important that gets capped. Now it's time to pull the oil pump out. This is our fuel pump. This is our oil pump. This hose feeds oil to the fuel pump. This also needs a vacuum cap, or again, you could unscrew this and put a pipe plug in. I just find it easier to put a vacuum cap on there. There's this linkage that goes to the throttle that needs to get removed, and that's just a press on. It should pop right off there. You might need a screwdriver in case you're trying not to break it. And see, I don't have the book. I don't know exactly where this is supposed to be positioned to move only its slight amount, and I just don't trust this pump based on also this needing to be rebuilt and, well, not many things working so well on this motor. This is held on by only 2 bolts. Now the shaft needs to come out of there, and it should have almost just came with it, but it didn't, so it should be loose in there. Just a little bit of a pry. There we go. Now I can get it. And goodbye. Now we won't be driven on the shaft, and the bushing that's in there is held in here, and we'll replace that with our dummy plug. There's a couple of very important things before you stick this plug in there. One, you want to make sure that it is, in fact, the same length as the shaft you removed. This is important so it will hold the bushing in there. So this would have been right about there. And in this case, we're good. We got the right one. Then, these are the screws that held the pump in, and they're longer. This one's very long, and we can't jam them all the way in there. So the kit, make sure you get the whole kit, comes with an O-ring and 2 screws. The screws are the correct length, and the O-ring must be placed on the shaft in this little seat for the O-ring. So it has to go right in this little groove here. And just sort of pull him up there. Tell him he's nice. We're getting a little oil on it, but that's okay. Maybe we'll go ahead and even lube him up a bit first, just to be safe. Now this has a flat side, and it can only go in one way. But it's generally pretty obvious because the holes won't line up if you put it in the wrong way. And it just won't go in. So if we look, that's not right. It needs to go this way. Push it past the O-ring. That O-ring will make a nice seal for you. And in fact, I think I am going to lube that up a little bit. Just a little petroleum jelly maybe. Never hurts to put a little lube on. I've just got some petroleum jelly. Just make sure our O-ring stays nice and supple and seats real well. Don't want to leave a ton on there. Definitely don't want a bunch of excess. just a little layer on the O-ring. Oops, wrong way. There it is. Now we take the 2 screws that came with it and send it home. There's one last thing to remove, and that is the low oil alarm, which we've unplugged already and is screwed on right above where the oil pump was. This guy right here. Let me take a little Phillips screwdriver. Well, would you look at that? It's broken and goobered. My goodness. Imagine that on a motor from 1985. There it is. Goodbye, low oil alarm. Yucky. That was wired into this box with the float that's in the tank that we removed from up here. So when there's no oil in there, it yells at you. We don't want it to yell at us because there won't be any oil, so we removed it. Don't over tighten these. It is a piece of plastic and you don't want to have to order another one. So just get them finger tight, and then with a small ratchet, maybe give it like 1/8 of an ugga-dugga. Now that seems about right. No ugga-duggas, just a bump. Now what's left is to put our vacuum caps on. I'm gonna get a little package of them here. And I think that this is the right size. It's just a rubber or vinyl vacuum cap. Get it at any part store. Boop. I wonder if I could get, no, that's actually pretty tight. So, I don't have little O-rings, and the parts store didn't have really good clamps for something this size, at least. It's very small, so we use a nice little zip tie. I like a thin one for an application like this, so that it can actually bite in there. And when you do this, you kind of pay attention to where the nipple was and make sure you are below it. I like to get these really tight. There we go. Before we go cap the other side, don't forget you've got this little linkage in here that doesn't have a home anymore. And he doesn't need to just flop around, so we'll pop him off of our throttle linkage there and just take him away. This is terrible troubles. This whole thing is meant to be threaded and adjustable, and it is just like a stripped out chunk of metal. Kinda ridiculous. Probably not so adjustable anymore. This side turns. Maybe a little bit. Back on the starboard side of the engine, we've got to remember to get our vacuum plug down there where the pulse line went to the crank. away, nice and tight. And put a zip tie on it. I need 2 hands for my zip tie. But that's pretty well it. Now you've done an oil delete. You can take these tanks out of your boat, mix your fuel 50 to 1. You can probably get away with 40 to 1, but I always do 50. And run it. Don't forget to tighten up the bolts for the air box. We've got our oil injection delete complete on this boat. There is, however, one final thing to do. When I turn the key on the controls here, that beep is an oil check. Now if I start the engine and it starts to crank, we get a constant alarm. Beep, 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 beep. In order to eliminate that, what you have to do is follow the brown wire that comes from here. It goes through here. Now your temperature alarm is on the same screw. So you'd want to make sure that you only disconnect the one that is for the oil level. And if you follow our wires through, okay, it's this one down here. That's this guy, and he comes through here. So it's only the very top one, or no, it's this one in this scenario that we want to remove. So remove that screw and pull just that brown wire, the one that follows this piece here. If you can see my hand, over into this box. Then we'll no longer have any kind of oil alarm on the boat. Now the very best thing you can do at this point, and in this boat's scenario, there isn't a temperature gauge. So on this side of the engine, there's an anode sticking out with a, not a thermostat, but either way there's 2 temp sensors going. This one will go to the alarm, and you can run this one to a temperature gauge. And that would be the very best thing to do, is just keep an eye on the temperature gauge and make sure that it's running at the appropriate temperature. So we'll go ahead and remove the one brown wire, then fire it and make sure our beeps are gone, and it's ready for a water test. So I've checked and double checked, and this one will be the temperature alarm, and this one will be the oil alarm. This one runs all the way over to where I said, and once we remove that and put the rest back, we won't have any more oil alarm beeps. This guy goes away. These need to go back. Now, when we turn the key, we shouldn't get any initial beeps. And they're gone. And when we crank it, the constant beeping shouldn't happen. And it does not. Now it's a fully complete oil injection delete. However, we should run a temperature gauge on this unit somewhere up there to keep an eye on the temp and make sure it's safe. But this needs all kinds of safety stuff. I mean, we've got single cable steering from 1985 that's, you know, not super great. It's all sort of jerry-rigged, but it's time to go water test this boat and see how fast we go and make sure everything runs great on our 50 to 1 setup, and we have a good time. Well, if you learned something, you enjoyed the video, and you think I earned it, do me a favor and push that subscribe button. Now here's a little clip of me ripping this 2.5 V6 on this sweet 1969 hydrostream Panther. This boat's not fully restored, so I got to about 72 miles an hour, well exactly 72 miles an hour on the GPS on my phone, and got scared and put it away. There's a few little snippets I managed to film. You can watch that happen. Okay, I got myself shoved out here. Time for a water test. No throttle. Let's trim it down and see if she wants to eat. Well, she's ready to eat. We are in gear, idling. It's a little bit rough idle, I guess, in gear, but it's probably because of the prop. Kill it and restart it and make sure that she's good to go here. Maybe one more rip. Just one more rip. Just a quick little one on the way in.